Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me today here. I'm Wesley. I'm going to introduce myself real quick, right? But I want to talk about vibe coding at enterprise scale. We did a pretty good experiment at Modus Create a couple months ago, and I would like to share about that. All right. So, introducing myself, I am Wesley Fuchter. I am from Brazil. I work at Modus Create as a senior principal engineer there, working there for almost 7 years now. And I have 14 years working as a software engineer. I have done many different things as a software engineer. I have done front end, back end, DevOps, solutions like that as well. And my expertise is around Amazon Web Services, Java, JavaScript, and serverless applications, right? And lately, I have been very focused on understanding how these new AI type of tools we are getting, coding agents, are going to change the way that we do software, right? I have been very focused on that in the last 9 months now. So while I'm going to the community, having conversations with folks, Reddit, Twitter, X, those different platforms, I have seen a lot of people doing different comments, having different opinions about vibe coding, about using coding agents tools for software development, right? And the pattern I have seen is basically two different groups in opposite directions. People thinking that software developers as a profession is now gone or soon to be gone. And in the other side, people that think that vibe coding is something that we should not be doing. People think that vibe coding or using agents for coding is not a good thing, right? So I am here today to try to put a balance on this conversation by bringing some facts, bringing some useful information of learnings we got in the last few months. I do believe that with AI, the way that we build software is changing a lot. I don't think that in the long run, in the next few years, we are going to be coding as we have been coding for the last 50 years, or at least in the last 25 years. Um, I think that AI and coding agents, GitHub Copilot, Cursor, Windsurf, those tools, right? They are going to change a bit, but it's not. I don't have an opinion, a strong opinion about being something uh, bad or good. I think we have a balance, and we need to think exactly how those tools can help us. For that, at Modus Create, we decided to vibe code an application internally, an internal experiment, to really understand how AI can help us do better software, to build better applications to help our clients, right? So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to present data from our experiment. I'm going to present the learnings we got, and I don't want to talk about hype. I don't want to talk about the trends and what people are talking about out there, right? I'm going to focus basically on the learnings we got from that experiment and what that taught us. We had basically 10 people working in a 3 months experiment between March and May. So it was a big thing for us, and we learned a lot that I want to share. Basically, the structure of the experiment, we decided to build an application, a simple mobile application that helps users to translate medical jargon into common people knowledge, couple language, right? Essentially, you grab your phone, you take a screenshot or a picture from a, a doctor's report, a lab report, lab exam report, and that diagnosis you have there, we translate that to common knowledge, right? Of course, using AI in the background as well. And we built that application twice. We had two teams. One team, what we call DIY, essentially do yourself team. They were not allowed to use any tools for coding, any AI tools for coding. They could use different tools, Stack Overflow. They could use the traditional software development as we are used to, right? But they could not use any tools for generating code using AI. And we had another team, the AI team, that was allowed to use Cursor and GitHub Copilot as to generate the code. And they were specifically asked to not code at all unless they really needed that. And when they needed to code, they will need to document that so we would understand why they needed to code something. AI team was only 2 developers, 2 engineers, 2 full stack engineers, and the non-AI team were 3 developers, right? So we had a smallest team working with AI. Both teams were asked to write plenty of documentation and to manage timesheets during the development process. So we will track to the detail of the task how many hours they are taking, they took in a given particular feature, right? And we use that modern technology. We developed the application using Bedrock as our LLM in the backend for Amazon Web Services. We used Fargate, Node.js. The application was built using React, Ionic, and Capacitor, and deployed using GitHub Actions to both Apple and Google Play stores. Of course, we didn't deploy externally, only internally.
I want to have a conversation with people, and avenues like this conference, are highly valuable to get out of your bubble, get out of your circle of influence, and just get other insights and other feedback. And you cannot have that by being online.
The best thing are the connections, and you can access to your heroes, right? Some people that you've been following for so long time, and they are here and they are available to talk to you, and they're willing to listen to you, to your ideas. I think that makes everything worth it, right?
And the most important part of our experiment was in the very beginning, we set up hypotheses on where the expectations we had about that experiment. We thought that the use of AI, in this case, Cursor and GitHub Copilot, they would help us to be at least 50% faster with a smaller team by 30%. So once again, the team that was using AI was 1 less engineer than the 3 engineers of the non-AI team, meaning 30% reduced capacity there. We also thought that using AI, the need of expertise, technical expertise in a given matter of the software development life cycle will not be required. Just to give an example, we had as a full stack engineer working on this project, an engineer that was primarily a backend Python engineer for his entire career. And he was asked to work as a full stack writing React code on the front end with TypeScript, both in the front end and the back end. So it was a new language, a new tech stack for him. We expected the quality of the code base to be at least the same quality of the non-AI team quality of the code base. So basically, we used Sonar on both code bases to do static analysis on those code bases, and we compared the outcomes of Sonar to understand if the code bases were as good as at least without the use of AI. And of course, we expected to have learnings, to learn a lot on the things we should do and the things we should avoid while using AI for coding. And the results of the experiment was pretty good, right? The results were pretty good. We had a 45% productivity gain on using AI, meaning the team that developed using AI delivered the application 40% faster than the team that was working without AI at that 30% reduced capacity. So a team of 2 people developed application almost at half of the time of the team with 3 people that was not using AI. The Python engineer that I mentioned, he was able to be productive and to deliver application using TypeScript. So the fact that, languages are pretty similar between them, right? TypeScript, Python, they have difference in syntax, but the basics of logic and the basics of software development, they are the same. So the developer was not required to code TypeScript during the project. He was required to think on the features, to think on how to implement the application. So AI helped him to be productive using a language that he never worked at before. That was pretty important to us as well. And the quality delivered by both code bases were pretty good, and they were similar. Both code bases had a couple issues here, a couple bugs there, normal stuff, nothing very complicated to fix. None of those code bases had major security hotspots. So we could evaluate both code bases and they were pretty much the same in terms of quality. But of course, nothing is perfect. We also noticed that the same Python engineer that I mentioned before, I asked him during the development to act as a DevOps person working on Amazon Web Services, especially around application load balancers set up in the architecture, right? And that was a point he struggled a bit. Not because the ability of using AI didn't help much because he was not clear on what he wanted to develop in that moment. He was not aware that he should use a application load balancer versus a API gateway, for example. So the inability of knowing exactly what you want to ask AI to do reduced his performance. But he was able to deliver the feature. It just took longer than a person that was not using AI, the DevOps person of the other team. So this proves that AI can do the job, but you as engineer, you must know exactly what you're asking for AI to work for you. You cannot just, hey, build this for me. You need to be more clear on your output, the output that you are expecting. What is the application you're developing, the decisions you make, your software architecture decisions. Provider, if you're going to use like cloud as a provider, Amazon, the things you want to use on Amazon, those kind of things, you still need to make decisions and provide that as context to the LLM. And it taught us a pretty important thing. And I want to be clear on the difference between the vibe coding hype or the nature of vibe coding, which was defined early this year, and what we did there at part of the experiment, right? So AI coding or agentic coding for us means using AI to speed up the process of writing the code. But the human in the loop must be a person that is skilled enough to make decisions on how AI should work, and skilled enough to do code review, to do the review of the AI generated code. While vibe coding says that you just rely on AI, you ask for something and you don't review the code, we don't believe on that. We don't trust on that. It's not the way that we want to work at Modus Create and the way that we want each people to work on. So for us, the human being is still required, and the human being is still required to be a software engineer, to be a person skilled on engineering, on writing applications. And that person is still the rock star on this workflow. This person is required to do the planning. This person is required to review the code generated by AI. This person is required to execute a process of validating the application and the code that was generated by AI to make sure that that application is ready to go to production. So the end of it is basically AI is not a replacement for architectural clarity or engineering expertise, but can be a multiplier of it. So as long as you still focus on having pretty good engineers and you still focus on skilling up your engineering team to use AI, those engineers can be better, can do a better job by using AI, if not 100% of the time, but pretty much it. Most of the time, they can use AI to brainstorm, to make decisions, to write an implementation plan, and to ask the AI agentic coding tool, Cursor, Copilot, whatever the tool you decide to use, to make sure that tool is going to speed up the development process for you by the correct and respectful management of that person. So what are the key learnings and the workflows we got there, right? First, for me, the best prompt, the best way you communicate with AI is being clear and concise on what you expect AI to do for you. So going to Copilot and being very clear, crystal clear on what you expect AI to do for you is the way that I see most productivity gains and most high quality professional results out of it, right? And for me, it starts with having atomic level tasks. Basically, imagine you have like a user story on your Jira board that you want to use, that you want to implement, right? That story needs to be broke down into smaller units. It can be subtasks, and from a subtask, you can create an implementation plan which is essentially, for me, implementation plan is a markdown file on your repository. And that markdown file, you define atomic level babe step actions that you want AI to go over in an interactive way. So basically, you create that implementation plan. You can use ChatGPT, other AI tools to craft that implementation plan. And then you review it and you are sure that's the plan you want to follow. You start asking AI to go over it and working on those bullet points, right? On each bullet point, when AI is done, you review the code base, you run validation steps such as linter, unit tests, tools you have available on your command line to review the quality of the code base. And then if you are happy with the output, you accept. If you are not happy, you provide feedback. When you are happy, then you commit that to Git, and it saves you if in the next prompts AI hallucinates and start deleting code. So committing often, working in smaller units, smaller babe steps, in iterations way is the way that we found that Modus Create in that experiment be the most productive way to work with coding agents. Of course, giving context to the LLM is also very important. And by giving context, I mean not a large context, but a rich context with narrow, laser focused information that is related to the task you want to accomplish. Too much context might make your AI to start hallucinating, right? That's not something we want. So finding ways to feed the LLM with the correct context for the task is also a skill that the human being, the software developer managing the tool, must develop now. And of course, there are different ways to do that, using instruction files to set up like coding patterns that are agreed upon the team, or having MCPs to feed the LLM with external context from Stack Overflow, a Google search, a Perplexity query, or of course, you doing a good job on writing the prompt. And of course, cleaning the context after a couple interactions because it starts growing and hallucinating. Some good prompts, of course, being clear and concise on explaining what you expect AI to accomplish for you, not just writing, hey, do something for me, right? Write tasks here or write tasks for that component. You need to be more clear. You need to be narrow and laser focused on what you want the AI to accomplish. For me, I don't use that much of prompts because I really want to use the implementation plan. And the implementation plan is essentially my prompt at the end of the day, right? So having an implementation plan with big steps and clear and concise action items there helps a lot because you can go to the LLM and say, hey, take a look on the implementation plan and let's start working through that. And this validation loop for me is key, is probably the best thing we learn because it keeps me focused, keeps me productive, and gets me good results. So I ask AI to start working on a task. That's the first step there. The AI, the LLM generates some code for me. That task, being a narrow, laser focused, babe step task, helps me to have a smaller batch to review instead of a large batch that it would be like 100 files pull request that would take me longer time to review and probably start missing stuff after a while. So it writes me some important code, couple components, couple functions, right? And then I do my human review. I go there and review the code base and start prompting with feedback. I write a large prompt with all the feedback I want. AI goes and start refactoring, changing the code per my feedback. I do my human QA work, my manual test, right? I go there and do manual tests to make sure that the application that is being developed is working as expected from a user perspective. I run automatic validations, which is also pretty important, like using unit tests, running tools like linter, lizard, Oversight. Those command line tools allow me to feed the AI with some context about what's wrong on my code base. Let's say use lizards to calculate the complexity, the cognitive complexity of a function. And then I use that feedback on the LLM so it knows what's wrong and then fixes it, right? So doing those validations, the automatic validations from the command line is also pretty important. And also happy, I do the Git commit. Like I often commit so I avoid having, losing code because of AI craziness at some point. Test-driven development is one of the workflows that I really like. It helps a lot because everything that I just said about narrow laser focused out tasks, that's TDD, right? TDD is based on writing smaller steps, on coding with tasks in smaller units. You write the task, you write the function, and then you try the function to pass the test. Those smaller actions is very productive to do with AI as well, especially when you are building complex components with different conditions or building a complicated set of functions of a business rule. Debugging is also important and is also very good using AI. You can use an MCP to grab CloudWatch logs, Grafana logs, external information about the problem you are trying to solve. And then you ask AI to not code, but to figure out what's wrong in the code base based on those logs. And then once you have a diagnosis on what's going on there, you can write, you can ask AI to write an implementation plan to fix it, and then you go over that implementation plan. So for me, AI is not magic, but with clear prompts, narrow focused tasks, rich context, a validation loop that makes sure your quality is kept, it can be an unfair advantage. So my last comment is use, experiment. Let's do the best we can on taking those tools as a friend. Let's use them as much as we can because our job as software engineers is changing, but we want to be there when the new things are coming out, right? So using AI is not going anywhere. So let's use as much as we can because that's helpful if done in the right way. Thank you, and I appreciate the time. And if you have any questions, we are going to have a session to discuss them.
Hey, thank you so much, Wesley, for your insightful session. And yeah, that was a very interesting experiment, vibe coding on enterprise level. And looking at the questions, well, that definitely resonates with our audience. And I like that few of the questions are not about, let's say, hard metrics, not about numbers, but about feelings. That is also super important when we talk about developer experience, right? And yeah, let's just pick the first one. How did developers feel about working with AI tools? I mean, if you have these insights, did it boost morale or create resistance?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. We had all the different type of feelings, right? Throughout the 4 months we were working, experimenting a lot with that. We had people that didn't believe that we could use AI to the level we wanted. We started the experiment I was talking, right, with a 50% hypothesis that we could be 50% faster than the team without AI. And I had developers saying, hey, it's not possible. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's not going to work, right? And I remember a specific guy, he was onboarding to the project. I was talking about that, and he was really not believing. So after a couple of weeks working with the AI tools, he did start believing on that. He did enjoy doing that because it was really showing the progress, the performance that we were aiming at the time. It's that type of skepticism that we have as a developer that, it's not that's blurring our how we see that, but we kind of don't believe exactly, and then we start practicing, we start experimenting, we start seeing this in action, and then we see that we can achieve good results with that. because I mean the community is all over the place. People are talking good things, people are talking bad things about it. Well, have different feelings.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, in general, talking about myself in first turn, developers are quite pragmatic folks, right? And maybe this was, I also could expect some pragmatic skepticism, if you call it like this way. And kind of follow-up question that is also more about feeling rather than numbers. What do you think could AI coding make engineers more lazy in thinking? What's your perception of that?
I think that kind of falls in the same bucket, right? We need to experiment to see. I can see, especially junior engineers, getting a bit lazy using AI, delegating too much to AI, right? But my proposal, the way that we are proposing to work with what we call vibe coding at enterprise scale, I don't really like the name vibe coding, but that's kind of the trend, right? The way I see it is you need to think a lot in order to write the right prompts. You need to think a lot in order to choose the right context for your application, for your prompt, for development of that particular task. So it is a different thinking. You are not thinking on the syntax of the code anymore, not as much as before, at least. But you are still thinking on the problem you want to solve, your options, the trade-offs of your decision making. For a experienced developer that is solving a harder problem, you need to think a lot on the context, on the prompts, on the trade-offs of the decisions that either you or even AI is making for you. A junior developer that, let's say, is doing a easier from a senior perspective problem, delegating that, especially in those years that you are learning a lot, you are making mistakes and learning, you can't be, in my opinion, making a mistake, because there are things you need to learn by doing, right? And if you delegate too much to AI, you're not going to get those feelings of, you write a function that doesn't work, and you're stepping your hand against the wall, and then, oh my God, I made a silly mistake. Those kind of situations are for junior developers. I think they are needed for learning. But from enterprise level perspective, senior engineering, you are going to be thinking a lot. It's just a different type of.
100%. So I second you. And yeah, that's about just different skill set that you need for wipe coding, if we keep calling it this name. So yeah, that's very good answer. And you mentioned a very interesting point, kind of permission for making mistakes, or right to make a mistake, especially if you talk about junior developers. And I think that is a great segue to the question about what could be the first safest steps for the company for start experimentation with AI coding assistants, just to make sure that, yeah, I mean, mistakes could happen, but there is some kind of guardrails. What could be your practical recommendations for people for companies who want to start these experiments?
I have kind of two different answers here. So let me start with a more practical one. Even without AI, you wouldn't push code to production with a few validation steps, right? No, intelligent, no professional company would ship code for production without unit testing, without safety on the pipelines, without validation, with people validating code. Those kind of things already happen without AI, right? Why we would do that without that with AI? That's a question, right? So one of the slides of the presentation is about the validation process, right? You need to have those steps that are working with AI in that process, the pipelines you already have with the unit test, with linters, with SonarQube for code quality, with Oversight for security and safety of your code, and of course the human code review. Those validation steps, they remain as important as before, probably more important now, because AI probably is going to make more mistakes than your human developers, your senior developers, right? So if you if you take out those validation steps, I mean, that's a problem. You should not do that, right? So keep having those validation steps, and you can add automated code review with AI as well. That's going to help productivity as well. The developer, the person working with AI, needs to be doing those validation cycles as fast as possible during the development, during that moment in time you are working for that particular pull request. Mm-hmm. And in a broader view, the company should allow people to experiment in safe environments. So choose a smaller project, an internal tool, right? Choose a project that you have a pretty good validation process already in place, and ask people to, hey, experiment, use GitHub Copilot, use Cursor, use those tools as much as possible, and you learn the best practice by doing that. I mean, we wrote a lot of content about that. Many people are writing content about that. You can learn by reading and watching YouTube videos. But your hands doing the work and getting that practice learning is for me, that's the key that people and companies should be asking developers to do.
Yeah, that's amazing advice for all technical leaders, for all engineering leaders. Yeah, don't forget about old gold best practices in software engineering, and just start small and see how magic happens. Thank you so much, Wesley, for your session, for your answers on the questions of our participants. Yeah, that was great pleasure to chat with you and learn from your session. Thank you so much.
All right, that's great. Thanks for having me, guys.
See ya.